And then Monday would come around, I'd weigh myself, and I would gain 2 pounds back. And I would sit there and sob, simply because I would literally look at Amadi, my husband, and be like, I worked so hard. Like, I worked so hard to get those 5 pounds off, and now they're back. Literally just because I ate one meal, and I look around and I see other women don't work half as hard as that. They don't do half as much. Like, why is it that I'm, like, given this body? Like, why is it that I can't seem to be skinny? Like, I can't seem to be thin. Why? My name is Delilah, and I constantly think I'm not good enough.
All right. Tell me about that. What does it mean to never feel good enough?
It means that I'm, like, constantly in defense mode with people. Like, I'm constantly fighting. I'm constantly achieving. And if I'm not achieving the way that the world wants me to achieve, I kind of crumble. Like, or if I don't please someone in the way that they want and they were to abandon me, like, that makes, like, I feel like people walk away from me because of me. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm the problem. As opposed to sometimes it literally being the other person. Sometimes it's just brokenness. Sometimes this is just the world that we live in. But even from a young age, I used to, like, I was the good kid, like, got straight A's, was the good girl with my mom, obedient, all the things. But I don't think I ever did that as a way of pleasing the Lord. I didn't really know the Lord when I was younger. I did it to please people, and I did it because I wanted people to look at me and say, you're valuable and you're good enough. But it was never from, I don't think it was ever, like, intrinsically motivated. Like, in my older self, now reflecting back on that, yeah.
What ways does that feeling of not being good enough manifest? Like, when you look at your life, what areas of your life do you look at and think, like, this is the reason I'm not good enough? This is the reason.
Ooh. I think it all stems from my childhood. My parents got divorced when I was 7. My dad is, he did the best he could growing up, but in the end, I think he made some big mistakes, and same with my mom. And I think ever since then, like, seeing my dad actively leave, what at the time when I was younger, I was like, he left me for another family. Like, he left me for another woman. I remember being 10 years old and thinking that I wasn't good enough, and that's why my dad had left. I see it as that. Or anytime, I even talked about this with my mom recently, I was like, Mom, when I was younger, I think whenever you were mad at me, I took it probably more than any other kid would take it, of a person being mad at me, because I was afraid of you walking away. So I think they're kind of linked for me, is like abandonment and your value. Like, if I am good enough, and if I work hard enough, and if I do what this person needs of me, I won't be alone, and they will stay with that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you share a little bit, like, how that will play out in your life, like, whether it be like in teaching or in
Oh,
CrossFit or
yeah. Like, or where I see, like, brokenness in those
yeah,
areas.
like, what areas do you look at and think, like, if I don't excel at this or I don't excel at this, what are some examples that maybe recently have come up where you're like, yeah, this is where I don't feel like I'm enough?
I mean, if you would have asked me a year ago in teaching, I don't think I've noticed it as much here, but in a year ago in teaching, I felt like if I wasn't getting the award, like, I was watching other people who I believe are also great teachers, but that would immediately make me think, like, oh, you didn't get the award because you didn't work hard enough. Um, Same with body changes in the gym. I think within a couple of years, I've gained weight, but people might think it's because I have unhealthy habits. And in part, probably. But I think I stopped, like, little do people know is that I stopped dieting. Like, I stopped starving myself and skipping meals and hitting, like, counting every slightest tic-tac in my diet. But I think what was happening when I was, like, and this was like 2 years ago, I would weigh myself every day, and if I'd see the slightest 2 pounds go up, I would sit on the bathroom floor and I would cry because I work really hard and not see results, and that makes me feel like I wasn't good enough either. If I wasn't getting a certain movement right, or if I would have gotten an injury, that would set me back. I remember once, I think in the gym a few years ago, I hurt myself in a front squat, and I, like, sat on a bike and sobbed next to Drew. Like, because then I knew, like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to perform or do my best in this. And so that made me feel like I wasn't good enough.
Can you describe some of that? Because I can't imagine that struggle of having that in your heart, feeling like I'm not enough, and then looking at a scale every single day. Like, talk to me about kind of the heart wrenchingness that must have been.
Oh, yeah. I think it was, and as a woman, weight fluctuates so often, but I think at that time I was seeing, like, progress. It's because I was counting everything. I was getting enough sleep. I was drinking a gallon of water a day, and I was doing all the things. And so I was seeing weight go down. It would take me like a week, and say I'd lose like 5 pounds that week. It was great. But then, like, literally the Monday of the next week, if I decided that Sunday I had a church event and, like, they would feed us Chick-fil-A or pizza or whatever, and I would eat that. And then Monday would come around, I'd weigh myself, and I would gain 2 pounds back, and I would sit there and sob, simply because I would literally look at Amadi, my husband, and be like, I worked so hard. Like, I worked so hard to get those 5 pounds off, and now they're back. Literally just because I ate one meal, and I look around and I see other women don't work half as hard as that. They don't do half as much. Like, why is it that I'm, like, given this body? Like, why is it that I can't seem to be skinny? Like, I can't seem to be thin. Why? I think I was equating thinness with worth. And I'm finally at a point where, like, sure, it's hard. Like, that's just going to be, I think, a thorn in many women's side and something I struggle with daily, but I have good seasons and I have bad. And I think within this past season, I've just kind of, like, seen my body as beautiful, not because of what it looks like, but because the Lord calls it beautiful. The Lord called it good. And I trust those words over what people say or probably think about it. But nonetheless, I was equating, to answer your question, I was equating skinniness and thinness with being fit and healthy. And I've just been so challenged by that recently of, like, nope, that's not true. Like, I've had some health professionals for the first time tell me, no, that's not true. You could be a size 14 and be healthy. Like, you could be, you go to the gym. You could also be a size 7 and completely unhealthy. And having learned that health is not even my worth even, which I also think we mix a lot in our world. So,
Can you share like a story maybe of a time before you really started to believe that, okay, what God says about my body is what matters? How would you go about trying to control your worth with your body?
oh yeah. I'm going to be vulnerable. I sing at a church, and I would watch the live stream as soon as it was out. And I would look at the other women on my team and be like, no. Like, I can't. Like, I'm clearly the biggest one on the team. Like, I can't look like that. So I got to dress differently so I could hide it. Or maybe if I wore bigger clothes, I could hide it. I often would body check in a mirror, and that's like pretty, I mean, that's pretty normal for women in general, but I think I would always do it with the intention of like, okay, if I wear this sort of thing that would hide it, then I'm good. And then I'm worthy of being on this team. That I could fit in more. Like, I think I would also, I think I would constantly like judge myself verbally, if that makes sense. Or like sometimes my defense mechanism is humor. Like, so, like while eating pizza would be like, oh, well, clearly, like this is a cheat day. Or clearly we need to, like, tomorrow I'll just run this off. It's no big deal. Like seeing exercise as punishment. As or I'd tell myself like, or if I had a wedding to go to, I'd be like, okay, clearly at the wedding they're going to have food that I probably shouldn't be eating. So therefore I'm just going to starve myself throughout the day. Like I just won't eat or eat something like a fruit or something and then get to that point. And that way I have complete calories that I could be eating without penalty. I would do that. Yeah. And I think I would sometimes I found myself like sulking in the lies.
What does that mean?
Like, well, I mean, I believed them as true of like.
What were some of the lies that you would hear?
I just said one. Like, I'm the biggest one on the worship team. That's what I would say. I would also say, like, because I'm not a certain size, I'm not as valuable, or I don't want to be seen as often. Like, so that was another that comes to mind. That was another thing of like I would see other people being posted on our church website. And I would be like, I really think this was Satan. I would see that person, and I wouldn't care that it was that person posted, but I would often think, oh, it's not you, and it's because of your size. Like it's because you don't look the part. You don't look like a typical Southern worship leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes total sense. Tell me, like, during those moments where you felt so much shame in that, or even now, like, what gets you through? What got you through? What carried you, and what carries you when you feel that way?
Yeah. I do think it takes time, like, and again, I think other people's opinions carried me. Like, why do you say these comments? So that people be like, no, you're not. Like, you're beautiful. And I'd be like, I said I was fat, not ugly. Like, I would do that in order to be affirmed. Oh, no, you don't look big. Or it would start like this other train, especially with women. Then they'll start going of like, oh, well, I think my legs are too long. Like, I think... So, we're just like in this non-kingdom conversation that just starts immediately as soon as you make a comment like that. So I would cope with that of like, okay, well, they clearly have something too. So like, I'm good. I don't, but I think I would seek people's opinions, and that's how I would cope the best. And I think sometimes I would just ignore it. Like I would suppress it and think that it went away because I suppressed it. So
how has God encouraged you through this?
Wow. I would say like within the past year or two, it's been, I've been super encouraged by the Lord. I read a book called Breaking Free from Body Shame that's by Jessica Connolly. I also went to my first healthcare professional, a dietitian, that told me, like, Delilah, I'm not going to put you on a diet. And it's because I was plateauing. I was eating 1,500 calories a day, and my weight would not go below a certain number, and I sought help. I went to like a medical professional, but for the first time it wasn't a family doctor. I went to somebody who specializes more in that, and it was the first time somebody told me, no, you actually don't need to change your body. Like, you can actually, like you're Mexican. You have different genes. And I'm not saying that all Mexicans have that gene, but she's like, look at your family. Like, these are the genes that you were given. Now, that I don't think that's, I feel like that could be a caveat for a lot of people of like, okay, the pendulum could swing the other way as well. Like, you could completely be not listening to your body and not taking care of it. And I'm not saying that either, but I sought help from a medical professional. I also sought help from counseling. And mainly, like, the first point, my first level, though, was that book. And it was the first time, like it said, like, you don't need to treat your body as a project. And I've never felt more free than from hearing those words of, like, and she was giving stories that I would do when I was little of, like, you would, like when I was little, I would look at myself in the mirror and I would, like, pinch parts of my body and be like, Lord, if you could just take this away. And she said those same stories that when she was little, she would do that. And I was like, oh. But her, like, main objective was saying, like, how about we live kingdom-minded with our bodies? How about we live, what would it look like for you to be free, to live free with your body? And that doesn't mean neglecting it. It means treating it the way the Lord does. And the first thing is she starts off with is saying, no, in Genesis chapter 1, the Lord calls your body good. And it calls it very good. It calls you very good. Granted, I think it's chapter 1. It could be another chapter, but in Genesis. But it was that, a dietitian, counseling, and lots of support from my community. Like, I had to, like, let my inner circle know, like, hey, when we go on a walk, can we just go on a walk for the sake of loving exercise? It took, like, I mean, and granted, I feel like our coaches are some of the best on the planet. Like, they wouldn't say anything bad otherwise, but I even let them in on it of, like, hey, I just want to love exercise again. Like, I don't want to work hard for some competition, like, work myself to the ground. I just want to love exercising and moving my body because my body is strong and it is capable of so much that I don't need to find my worth in being a certain size. But I let my community in on it of, I would love for us to do this together. And do we backtrack? Yeah. Do I have seasons where I crumble? Like, I will be honest that this happened 2 weeks ago because I looked at pictures of myself from the competition and I was like, dear God, I've never been this big in my life. And the Lord and Amadi was immediately like, no, don't talk about my friend that way. No, like, that's not true. I also took breaks from social media here and there. I also unfollowed trainers and so-called health professionals that tell you that you can only eat 70 carbs per day or something crazy like that. I follow people, like, even CrossFitters that live a completely different lifestyle now where they're like, no. Encourage your body with scripture. Take care of your body. Delight. But also, yes, enjoy the pancakes. Like, and also of bodies of all sizes are worthy because he calls you worthy. And yeah, you are good enough because he calls you good enough. And because of what his son Jesus did for you on the cross, that's why you're good enough. Yeah.
Did your dad ever affirm you?
No. My dad doesn't even know I struggle with this, I don't think. No, my dad would make comments that would make me more self-aware.
What kind of comments?
like when I was little, it was like, no, if you can't eat sugar. Like you can't put that down because otherwise you're gonna be big like your nana, or you're gonna be chubby. Put that down. You can't eat sugar. That's my mom. I mean, my mom as well. Like it's in Hispanic families, it's something that I think my mom currently has grown a lot from. But when I was younger, yeah, Hispanics I think especially in Mexico, glorify skinniness. Like if I lost weight, and little did they know I was starving myself, I lost weight for my quince, which was when I was 15. And I remember them looking at me and being like, you look like a doll. You're so skinny. Look how beautiful you are. Little do people know that those kind of comments are actually hurtful. It's like, oh, did you not think I was beautiful before? Like,
do you remember the first time you actually began to become aware of body image and be like, I'm not okay with what I look like?
Yeah. And I think I was like 7. I tell this to people all the time. Like, I've been dieting ever since I was 7.
Huh. What made you start at 7 years old?
Well, when I was 7, it was the first time I noticed that I was a certain size, which I believe was an extra large for littles. And I looked at my little friends and they were like small, XX small, just little skinny things. And it was the first time I looked at them and thought, and my mom and my aunts, like if I brought my friends over, they would comment on them, be like, you're so skinny. But also it was like a food thing. I guess I have this burden that I love food. So with that, when I was little, I would eat, but I would eat so much and sometimes overeat because I thought I'd never get it again. Like there was no freedom of knowing like, yeah, you can have a cookie. You can also have one tomorrow. You don't have to have 8 right now. You know, there was no, it was more of like, no, you can't have that. And so I think when I was younger, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it behind people's backs. So that way they don't know that I'm eating these things. And I think with that, I gained weight. Like when I was little, I was overweight when I was little, especially up until middle school. And
you talked earlier about just feeling like you want to be enough. Tell me how that played into this side of it. Because you talked about, okay, well, if my parents are saying these nice things about these girls because they're skinny, and I want to be enough in their eyes, did that affect?
Oh, yeah. That was part of it as well. It wasn't just like my grades and achievements. It was also like, okay, if I'm skinny and like, or if we go to Mexico, I have to make sure that I'm a certain size so that way my aunts think I'm pretty. Or that way I'll look good in pictures. So I'll feel good about myself in pictures, which is another thing I beat myself up with. So yeah, absolutely. It was another thing that if I could just like earn more points with this person, they won't leave. I could.
So do you think that came from the fact that your dad left?
I've never thought about that. But yeah, I do think it was a factor. I don't think it was because of it, but I do think it was a factor.
What's your relationship with your dad like?
Oh, man. It's come a long way. My parents got divorced when I was 7. And then there was a period of time where my dad kind of lived close to me. And then after that, he moved to Virginia. And I lived in California. And I didn't see him for 7 years. But when I finally saw him, I've been seeing him about every year. Or every other year. I'll go see his family. At this point, I have a lot of compassion for my dad, but he does the best he can. So he struggles with a disorder that I think makes it hard to understand. And I've actually been convicted about this recently of like, oh, if you, I have little patience for mental health sometimes. And that's something I've been convicted by. And hearing like some really well-known pastors in the church talk about their struggle with mental health has made me like realize, oh, I think sometimes I just don't give him enough grace. But that is one thing. Our relationship is much better than it was before, but it's rocky.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Said earlier that the first time you really started noticing your body was at 7, and at 7 is when your parents got divorced. Is there any correlation?
Now that I'm talking about it, maybe, maybe I don't. I've never really like sat and thought about it. There's something about those years that I don't completely remember everything, and apparently that's a trauma thing. But no, totally, it could have been linked
Yeah.
to it.
I want to kind of segue into like another topic,
Great.
but it's tying in. Talk to me of the difficulty of being a person of faith, being a church person, and carrying that difficulty throughout, and
Oh, yeah.
feeling like maybe hearing a message that if I'm a church person, I'm supposed to be this confident person in Christ, but yet I'm still wrestling so much to be okay with myself.
In the end, I think all of us are like innate desire is that we want to glorify ourselves, you know? So in like glorifying yourself, sometimes you construct this like, okay, if I can get people to believe this about me, then I can hide. And of course, I've been a worship leader for years, for maybe 10, 11 years now. And of course, that's always something I fight. It's a temptation to hide behind blank. So behind the mic, or if I do this riff good enough, then people will celebrate me more and therefore think that I'm a good worship leader because I can sing. Or it's like also the opposite. Oh, I messed up a moment. I messed up a spiritual moment. I said something weird. I'm done. They're going to think that I'm not qualified to teach any sort of biblical concept. It's the fact that specifically for worship leaders, I think it's, or anybody on a stage, I think it's always the temptation that Satan will always want to put in your mind of like, you're not doing enough. Like, oh yeah, what God said about you, did he really mean that? I mean, wasn't that not the first question he asked us? And yeah, I think that is and then especially in the South is another degree of that, I believe, of cultural Christianity of, oh yeah, I believe in Jesus. So do demons, but, and because of that, I'm good. I'm fine. I don't need to show you my actual self because then you might think I'm weak or that you might think I'm not qualified to do this. And then, gosh, has like the Lord been just convicting me over and over this year of like, you don't make yourself good enough. I make you good enough. I mean, John 15, like you didn't choose me. I chose you. I chose you so that you could go and bear fruit. But how often do we want to take the credit? So I think, again, it's always that bent in humanity of glorifying the self, of putting ourself above glorifying him. Glorifying the fear over glorifying here, glorifying the sin over glorifying. Like, so I think specifically in the church, it's difficult. And I don't want to say it's all like, I also don't know if it's safe to quite share like super vulnerable things with absolutely everybody in the church. There needs to be wisdom and discernment in that. But I do think there needs to be an inner circle. I've recently heard from somebody, literally, I think yesterday, and she said within the church, if somebody's not submitted to someone, that's a problem. Like if someone's not ever hearing no from somebody or being corrected, that could be an issue. Why? Because we're glorifying ourselves. And so I think that's often like what I have to do as a worship leader. And as a worship leader of a pretty big church, like I have to acknowledge the fact that there are a lot of people that see me sing every Sunday. And there is great privilege with that, great honor, but also a great responsibility to make sure that like I'm not up there performing. I'm really not. And has there been temptations? Are there some Sundays that I call it like autopilot, where I'm on autopilot? Absolutely. But I think where I've seen the Holy Spirit fall the most is whenever I am weak on stage. Whenever I put the mic down because I see something else that needs to be addressed, whether that be prayer, whether I put the mic down and get on my knees because he's like, no. Like, I'm talking to you with this one. This isn't for you to minister to everybody else. And like, I need you to hear me on this. And so I'll respond. And I think I kind of veered off a little bit of what you asked, but I just think, of course, that's the temptation of the church. It's the temptation of people on platforms. And unfortunately, people love to put me on platforms because they see a gift in me that is not my own. And I just have to keep reminding myself of like, this is not your gift. Like you have to offer it back to him. Or it is like, it's just like what you have to give glory to his name with this gift. I make mistakes, and I often think that I have to do more in order to be successful. And it's because that usually starts happening when I start looking to my left or my right and not focusing on the Lord. Yeah.
Tell me about that gift. What gift did God give you?
I think I just have the gift of encouragement. And sometimes that encouragement is through music. Sometimes that encouragement is through like verbal encouragement that I give people, or through cards, or I think my gift is, I was given a word once, and I won't forget that she told me this, and she's on our worship team as well, but she said, you remind me a lot of Miriam in the Bible, who like goes before a crowd of people with a tambourine. After the Israelites had passed through the Red Sea, and she like leads the people with song because of where they're at in life. And that is, I do think that is also my gifting. But I just also, I was processing this with Amadi the other day, actually. I just genuinely love people. I genuinely have seen the Lord work in so many ways in my life. What I desire the most is for people that come from broken backgrounds like me. I desire for them to know the Lord. Like, I desire for them to know that there is indeed a Father who loves them, even though their background might have shown them otherwise.
How did you find that for yourself?
I was invited to a youth group when I was 17. And, but I wouldn't say my faith was solidified until I was in college. And it was my freshman year at Corbin, at the university I went to, that my RA looked at me and said, maybe you are here for such a time as this. Like, maybe the Lord has purpose behind the pain that you've been through. And that truly was a healing year for me. One of my healing years. Where I was deeply afraid to go home because of the expectations of my mother. And then I was also deeply afraid to go see my dad and my dad's family because just with what we were going through at that time. But I think that's when I encountered Jesus through community, was it my freshman year of college. And I learned that not all people, they're going to fail you and they're going to make mistakes. But it kind of gave me a new category of people, of like Christians that actually care about you and actually mean what they say.
Did you have experiences in your life where that wasn't the case?
Oh, yeah. I've had, in fact, arguably, I think I've sometimes had more experiences with Christians being mean to me than non-Christians. I'll be honest.
How were they mean to you?
I think they just made me more self-aware, like in a bad way, like more self-conscious. Again, the first worship team I led at was at a huge megachurch in California, and I was 17. And the first thing we had was not like prayer for what the day was going to look like. It was not like us on our knees. It wasn't, the Bible wasn't open at all. It was a woman coming up and pulling all the women on our team and being like, okay, this is what you can and cannot wear. And being like, oh yeah, you can't, I don't know about, you can't wear that. That's like a vivid memory in my brain. I also just think Christians try to be helpful by pushing away pain. And little do they know that that's like mean. They don't, it's almost like Job's friends, like that sat with, like during a time of grief, didn't sit with him, that maybe that they would lift the burden off of him just by sitting with him and being sad with him. Because don't you think like the Lord is like that with us? Like when we are deeply grieved and in pain, I don't think Jesus comes to you and says, you know what? But God always does it for a reason. Oh, but this has a purpose. And even though like that could be true, but I don't think Jesus does that. Jesus met with the Father in the Garden of Gethsemane the night before his crucifixion. And like right before that, it says like Jesus was filled with great sorrow and anguish. So he retreated to pray. And then he just said, Father, if there's any way you could take this away from me, there's any way, but also your will, not mine. Paraphrased, of course. And so and I think God just met him there. I don't think God said, you shouldn't be feeling that way. Yeah. And I think many Christians have done that to me. Of, Delilah, you feel too deeply. You're just being emotional. I was like, okay. So, if that answers your question.
Yeah. What, can you think of a time or times when you were going through something and someone actually did sit with you for the first time and you're like, oh, wait a second, you got to experience how God does sit with you from a actual human being sitting with you?
Yeah. My husband.
Mm.
Yeah.
Tell me about
I
that.
think at the previous school I worked at, I was really going through it. So I would come back and just like break down. And there are moments where Amadi just sits with me and he says, I'm sorry. But he hasn't done it perfectly the whole time. No, he's also had to learn of like how best to respond because pain makes us uncomfortable. I understand that. But that definitely. I've also seen it happen within RCG, not just for me, but so beautifully with other people within our life group. Sometimes we can just sit in the ick together and not have to explain why it happened or, I don't know, say cliche things that like, it's like, it could be true, but I think we just want to push past the valley so quickly that we don't notice the Lord within our suffering. And I've been also really challenged with that of like, I just sat there in my pain and I didn't acknowledge you once, and I'm sorry. I should have gone to you. But I think it's in those moments that are so deeply hurtful and painful that I've seen the beauty of the Lord with friends who just it almost lifts the burden to know that people are sad with me or that are angry with me. And it's not in a way of that, like, I just need to hear, like, I need to hear what I want to hear. Not necessarily. I think there's a time and a place to be corrected. I think there's a time and a place to receive admonishment. I also think there's a time and a place to grieve. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. You know, like, there is something about carrying the hurt together that I think reveals Jesus, who carries your hurt with you. Because I think it also grieves him more than anyone. Yeah.
Earlier, you said that you feel like God's given you the gift of encouragement. If you could go back to your 7-year-old self and encourage yourself, what would you say to you?
I think I would first and foremost say that you are so deeply loved by a Father who is with you and will never leave you. I would also look at her and say, eat the Mexican sweetbread. I would also look at her and say, it's going to be okay. Like, you're going to be okay. Your family's going to be okay. And that there are good men. There are good guys that will love you the way that Christ loves the church.
My last question. What encouragement do you have for women out there who have experienced what you've experienced or are currently experiencing it and just don't see an end, don't see a light, don't see hope?
I would say, first and foremost, the same thing. You are deeply loved. You are deeply loved by a Father who sent his Son for you, sent his Son to die for you. I would also say not to ignore your sadness. And to also not burn bridges or build resentment with people that don't understand. People are uncomfortable with grief. People are uncomfortable with pain. People are uncomfortable with strong emotions. I think the church, what I've been encouraged with recently by spiritual mentors, like the church at large, I think is uncomfortable with real emotions because they don't want to lean into feelings. And that's not what I'm saying either. I'm not saying put your faith in your feelings. I'm saying acknowledge that your feelings are there because even Jesus acknowledged his feelings. So I would say don't ignore your sadness, but don't shut Jesus out of your sadness. He wants to be there. It grieves him too. And he wants to carry this for you so that you don't have to. I would also say confess, which is the hardest thing to do, is to let people in. Like I said, like we always try to find ways to hide. No. But just like the scripture I've really been meditating on this year, that says God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. If we claim to have fellowship with him and yet live in the darkness, we lie and we do not live out the truth.
Wow.
We are not living. It's almost kind of like what our pastor says all the time. It doesn't make you a good or a bad person. You're just dead. Like, you're not living in the fullness of his truth if you don't confess. You're not living in the fullness of what community could be if you don't confess. And I've been so challenged by that this year. Even as of an open book as I am, I still am challenged by like, oh, are they going to leave? Are you going to stay here if I tell you this? And what I will say though, is that there are good people that will stay. That's what I would say to those women. There are good people that will stay, and they will carry this with you. And they won't be mean. There are some non-mean Christians out here. They're actually very nice. I would say to confess those so that you're not carrying this burden alone. And not even for like, because then we go into and that's a whole other topic, because that's like accountability. That's a whole other thing that I'm like, I feel sometimes Christians use that of like, oh, accountability, it's because I'm checking in on you. And I was like, sometimes I really feel like you're doing that for the sake of gossip, or like, what is this accountability? What does that mean? I feel like the only person that could hold us truly accountable is God and his just mind. We can just be there for each other. How about instead of accountability, you just check in for the sake of how much you love me? And because you genuinely just care about me. How are you doing with this? And that I don't think it has to be accountability. I think it has to just be loving well, loving your neighbor well. But that would be it as well, is to confess, to have somebody carry this with you, have somebody check in with you so that you're not tempted to hide. Stop hiding. And I would also say that although it never I don't want to say never. I think Jesus still does miracles today, and he will take things away. But even just the simple of coming out of agreement with what lies the enemy has been telling you, coming out of agreement and coming into agreement with what God says about you, you'll have seasons where it just feels more free, less pressure, more grace. And so to be constantly filling your mind with the word, filling your mind with what is true, and transform your mind. That means like actively practice. Like it's not that I never have these thoughts come in my mind again. Like I said, it happened 2 weeks ago. I acknowledge it's there. I grieve, but then I remember. I remember who I am to God, who I am to the people that care about me, who I am in the kingdom. And I think that brings me comfort. I don't think it goes away all the time. It can, but sometimes I think the Lord leaves these things for us because otherwise would we seek him? I don't know if I would. I definitely wasn't seeking him when I was skinny because I thought I had it all together.
I actually do have one last question.
Okay.
Because you brought up like what you mentioned, what God says about you. What does God say about Delilah?
Oh, man. He says that Delilah's identity is being his daughter. That although I am a Mexican American, that's not all of who I am. It's just a part. That I'm also not just a worship leader. I'm not just my talents. I'm not just a teacher or a wife or a friend, but that I'm simply loved by him, that I'm simply his daughter. I think he loves the fact that I'm emotional. I think he loves the fact that I'm passionate. He has seen me get into trouble with it, but for the most part, I think he loves it. I think he loves that I will sometimes say what people are not saying. I also think he thinks I have a great appetite and a great sense of taste for food. I love food. And I think that I'm simply loved by him.
I think it's a great ending.